just want to say thank you first to everyone who's joining us now, whatever sector you're from, wherever you're coming from, location-wise. We'd love to actually hear where you're coming from. If you drop in the chat, it's open right now. We'd love to know where you're hailing from and what industry you're in, whether it's entertainment, education, mental health, development, filmmaking, of course, or otherwise. We'd love to know who's here today and where you're coming from. I'm Isern. I'm one of the co-founders of The Shift, and I'm your lead conversation starter today. Let's open it up. We're here to explore, consider, speculate on, and discover together what the role of filmmaking takes in bringing mental health stories to life, what's informed the projects and stories that these filmmakers today who are joining us with huge hearts will speak about here today, and how themes of mental health in film can open up new conversations with not just audiences, but for the creators along the way. So kicking off this first Mental Health Movies in the Making panel from The Shift, a great big welcome and gratitude to our first gathering of panelists today, Ricky Fosheim, Ossey James, Nira Burstein, and Frank Isaac. Thank you all four for coming together today to talk to us about your efforts. We can't wait to hear about your process, your projects, your takeaways from filmmaking and creating around mental health topics. And I'm so excited to just get started and dig in with you. So for everyone, as you know, you've got the panelist bios in the chat so you can know these filmmakers more, but I want to give you each an introduction opportunity. I'd love for each of you to take, a minute to introduce yourself, what your, quick overview of your film and what it inspired you to create it, what led you to create around this particular topic. I'm going to tell you, we'll start with Ricky first, then Ossey, Nira, and Frank. So Ricky, go ahead and give yourself an introduction.
Hi everyone, my name is Ricky Fosheim. I'm a feature film independent producer here based out of Los Angeles. I've got 6 features under my belt. And I produced this movie called Pure O, which stands for Pure Obsessional, which is an actual clinical diagnosis. It's a form of OCD. And it's based off the writer-director Dylan Tucker's real-life experience getting diagnosed with this mental disorder. And he got diagnosed much later in life, in his mid-30s. And so when it happens much later in life, it actually hits you harder because you've had your whole life thinking you're one thing, and then suddenly your whole identity shifts and changes. And we just want to show kind of a positive portrayal of like getting through a mental health disorder and community, and actually bringing in real life sufferers from this disease. We're actually actors in the movie, so we really just wanted to show an accurate portrayal of what it's like to go through the diagnosis, and then it's not a death sentence, and that you can live a happy, fulfilling life afterwards.
Thank you, Ricky. Ossey.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Ossey James. I'm also an independent producer, director, and writer here in Los Angeles, California. My film is called Intruder. Currently, it's in script form. This was something I wrote with a very talented producer named Katie Lolt, who couldn't be here with us today. Our film Intruder is about a successful businesswoman who, based on issues she had in her past, she had to relocate her life for a new job. And in that process, the feeling of loneliness started to kind of overwhelm her and exaggerate some symptoms she was having of a condition. And the way that they manifest in the film are kind of in the form of an outside entity. And we wanted to tell this story to give a perspective of people who maybe have not been educated on the ways that people suffer with mental health conditions, and then also to recognize people who deal with those conditions. So this film is really about kind of creating cinema, of course, that's why we're all here, but also to push a understanding for an impact for more awareness in these types of things.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nira Burstein. I'm a filmmaker based in New York. And Charm Circle is a really personal exploration of mental health because it's about my family and various struggles everyone's had over time. And I think about mental health as like a juxtaposition to emotional intelligence, and like how those two ideas make a person. And I'm all about trying to reveal people for more than themselves and pass their stigmas of mental health, because I think, you know, we need to have broader discussions around that. And I explore that also in my narrative work too.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nira. Frank?
Hello, everyone. My name is Frank Isaac. I'm based in Los Angeles. I work for a company, Film Finances, as my day job, overseeing films, and we provide completion guarantees. During the first half of my 40-year career, I worked as an executive and as a producer, and I am interested in getting back to my roots. So I'm in development with a partner named Dave Broom on a project that he has written. It's a screenplay based on a true story of a man named Kevin Nordstrom. And when Kevin was in college, he experienced his first episode of schizophrenia. And like many, he felt the stigma of his lack of mental health, i.e., his mental illness. And so he concealed it from everyone, including his immediate family, his parents and his sister. And he met a woman who became his wife. And with her support and guidance, he came to find ways to understand his illness and to live with it productively. And at the point that they were expecting a baby, it caused him a lot of concern about where things would lead with him as a father who still experienced schizophrenia. But it also caused him to know that he needed to come forward to inform his family about his condition, which he hadn't done previously, but he managed to find the strength and the courage to do it. And consistent with what this fine organization, The Shift, is promoting, this film, Let Your Freak Flag Fly, is about the importance of being able to communicate about mental health. So I'm proud to be here to talk to you about that and to hear about the wonderful projects that my co-panelists are speaking about.
Absolutely. Thank you all for again. I mean, these are clearly very courageous stories. They're very personal stories. You know, I think everyone in some way or another wants to find the way to be the most themselves in some way or another. And those conversations aren't always easy to figure out how to start them or to imagine what's going to happen by having them. I imagine working on films like this starts to bring, you know, some form of reflection on yourself, whether it is your story or someone else's story. And not just for you, but for all of the people working on these productions. I'm curious, there's sort of a range of truthfulness to these stories, right? There's the real life accounts, there's scripted accounts, there's inspired by accounts. To what degree do you feel you can be truthful in terms of the process? Is there a cost or is there a balance to that in terms of, you know, how that affects everyone involved? And I want to start with Ricky and the Pure O script that in reading, I was so really moved by a strong scene involving exposure therapy that was incredibly revealing in terms of the incredible pain that someone can go through, but also the real potential of recovery. Without any spoiler alerts, I just really want to acknowledge that was a powerful scene and almost so truthful that it was frightening and incredibly empathy building at the same time. So yeah, I'll start with you. How do you incorporate these truths and manage how it impacts everyone?
Well, I think we were unique in that the writer-director, it's based off of his life. So we were literally pulling scenes. Dylan's very smart. He's an actor as well, too. He's got an incredible memory. So it's almost he's taking notes as he's going through some of the most traumatic moments of his life. And he waited about 4 or 5 years to write the script and eventually make the movie because he wanted to be far enough away that it wasn't going to trigger anything within him. but also close enough that he had a fond memory of it. And the scene in particular, talking about the climax of the movie, and without giving anything away, you know, we really showed his mental health diagnosis and how it affects every part of his life, how it affects his family, how it affects his relationship and his fiance, how it affects his friends, his job. And also, like, what is the process of getting diagnosed by a mental health professional and like going through those steps? And oftentimes with Puro, um, you're misdiagnosed, and what you need is more of a group therapy setting. And so in this group therapy setting, the climax of the movie, he has to like face his biggest fears, like literally the biggest fears that you could possibly think of. Again, I don't want to give away too much, but he's in this room facing them, like with his girlfriend and with a therapist, and it's like it's frightening. And people always say, "Is that real?" And Dylan's like, word for word, like that is what happened. And yeah, it's intense. I mean, therapy, you could imagine, it's never something that I've had to go off the deep end of. But yeah, I mean, this movie definitely is not afraid to go there. And I think it's honest and accurate because, you know, Dylan went through that process. The actors that were in the room with him had also been through that process. So it just felt very real and lived in, or at least that's what I'm trying to do.
Absolutely. Does anyone else want to jump in on that in terms of the impact of that truth being in your film? Neera, I'm curious with you because it was a documentary that was your true to life story.
Sure. Yeah, it's a very interesting question about like how truthful you can be. And I feel like, what's the cost of not being truthful? You know, like, are we setting ourselves up to fail when we don't, you know, tell the truth? And, you know, there's varying levels, and there's like, okay, yeah, what details, right? That's one thing. But something, you know, Charm Circle has been out a few years now, and some of the comments or feedback I've gotten is that, you know, this was too intense, or it was the truth, so why did you do that? And that is exactly, I think, part of the stigma that I'm trying to fight against, because if we can't have these discussions and we say that certain people with mental health issues don't have the same agencies that people that are mentally healthy, it really just limits our conversation. So I think, you know, the truth is where it's at, and maybe not everyone's always ready for that. I just think it's important that, you know, the information that we put out about something, that people know what they're getting when they press play. I think, you know, Charm Circle is fairly accurate in its way. Like, this is what you're signing up for with this movie.
Ossey or Frank, do you want to speak to this?
I think that what an audience deserves is content that rings true. And I think that in our case, we're basing the screenplay, the story, on a true story. And Dave, in the process of writing the script, conducted extensive interviews with both the protagonist, Kevin, and his wife, Laura, to identify the key incidents in their lives that needed to be told and portrayed accurately and truthfully. And I think that that is an obligation that we have if we're serious about trying to open up an honest and constructive conversation about mental health through our storytelling in whatever media we're choosing to address it.
Okay, and then just to add on all of your great, honest answers, I think as filmmakers, we all have a responsibility with the things that we put out into the world, especially when it's something as sensitive as mental health, or disability inclusion, or LGBTQ content to inclusion as a whole. And you know, as all of you, it seems that we've all taken the core of our story, which is rooted in truth, and we all have the goal of presenting that truth to people. When I was doing research, writing the script, and looking back in my life and in recent years and past years, when I've had to be a caretaker for someone with mental illness, or someone close to me in my life was a caretaker for someone. So we also conducted extensive interviews with people who were directly impacted by that. And the key thing that sticks out in our story that I think is not spoken about or represented enough is like a person's personal relationship with their medication. That's a huge core component of our story, and it's really about a woman's experience, how her loneliness and her symptoms are a battle with her, between herself, to make the right decisions with her medication, or how she handles a situation or relationships in her life. So yeah, I think that's a responsibility that we all have, to do that due diligence for our films. Yeah.
For sure.
Thank you all for those reflections. And I know that in either reading your scripts or in watching the screeners you shared, I definitely had that experience that I think every audience member has, of putting yourself into the character's shoes, into that hero's journey. And inevitably these scenes or, personal sort of experiences that these characters have start to activate the question of, how does this apply to me? Where do I fit in this story? Where have I seen this before? Where have I potentially felt this before? So, as somebody takes in a film like this, what is like that dream scenario? Someone finishes your film, and what do they do next? What is that you're hoping to create?
Well, for our movie, the tagline is, "We all need the help of other people," and it's all about community. And it's not necessarily, we all know that you need to be vulnerable to ask for help, but there's also the other way too, of like, it takes a little bit of courage to step up and help somebody too. And you don't need to necessarily always have permission if you do it in a polite, nice, in the right, thoughtful way. But just opening that door. Sometimes it's you that opens that door, but sometimes somebody else needs to open that door to allow you to come through it. That's very much the message that we wanted to get across. Yeah.
Cool. As far as our film, I think it's in alignment with Ricky, but also like, we think about like, how do in any film scenario, it's like, the goal is, how do you affect your audience? How does your audience come experience something that you've created, whether it's rooted in truth or fiction? And then what questions do they have within themselves during that experience? What questions do they have afterward? What things in my life did I learn from this? And how can I take this experience and apply it to future situations that I may or may not be in with someone who deals with these conditions? So I think for us, it's to give the perspective for people who may not be as educated or experienced with these issues, but also to recognize people who do deal with these things, so they feel seen and understood. I think that's really important.
Mo, I think other feature films have certainly portrayed mental illness and presented mental illness and mental health issues very, very well. I think what we're trying to do with our project is to present it in a way in which the audience comes away feeling that there's hope, meaning that through the support that Laura provides Kevin, and the devices that she provides to him to when he's beginning to have his episodes, that one can live a very productive and successful and happy life with this affliction, this condition. And I think the other thing that is very relevant is that there needs to be the ability to tell one's closest family and friends about what they are experiencing. And Kevin finds the courage to do that. And I think that's what we want the audience mostly to come away with, which is that talking about mental health should not be any different than talking about one's physical health, and confiding in others and sharing and listening. And that is the way that we would like to portray it in a way that I think opens up the conversation and causes some positive outcome.
Absolutely. I'm curious because I'm imagining people listening are reflecting on, ways that they can maybe have a takeaway for their own practice of filmmaking or building, conversations around different mental health aspects. So I'm curious if you did anything differently in terms of how you approached your creative process or built your team or handled your set as a result of it being a mental health related film that someone might say, oh, I want to do that. Any special approaches that you took in your filmmaking? Nira, I'll start with you.
So when it came to Charm Circle, which is, like I said, a personal film about my family, when I had like a cut of the film, and I mostly film the movie myself, there were at times other people that helped me, but for the most part, it was just me. There was just an intimacy factor involved with that. And when I had an edit, I brought my family together and we watched it, just the five of us. And it was really important to me that before we would ever see a public audience, that everyone was on board with everything in there. And very gratefully they were. But I think establishing trust with your subjects or checking in, and I'm doing a short also that has a narrative short that also has mental health, like checking in with people that know about how things might be perceived from the outside, from a medical perspective, from a more professional perspective. Just seeing all the different angles, that might go into the audience as well as the participants' perspective on what's happening. And just checking in with a lot of different people about that.
Keeping the conversation alive as you go. Ossey or Ricky or Frank, anybody else? Yep.
Well, for our movie in particular, at the script stage, we sent it to a mental health OCD therapist professional here in Los Angeles, and they were able to review the script and give some notes. Their notes were much more technical, like we had captured the heart of what was being said, but they were able to come in and tweak just a couple little lines that were able to like just help add clarity, so just in case it goes through some sort of test, it can pass. So that definitely helped. In the group therapy scenes, there's 5 individuals in the movie that are suffering from this form of OCD, and of the 5 in the group, 3 of them actually were sufferers from the disease who had gone through this treatment before. So like I had mentioned earlier, there was an extra layer of authenticity there too. Yeah, I mean, I think we led a lot by example. Just it's such a vulnerable movie, and the actors were so vulnerable and the story we're telling is so vulnerable. So yeah, I mean, everybody just like really put their heart and soul into it to get every little detail right. And we were patient and we took the extra time to get those random little shots that you might think, might not be needed in there, but from a mental health perspective, like somebody's reaction to something, is maybe more important in this type of story than it might be in a different one. So yeah, we just went the extra mile at all times on set too.
Well, I will say that you and Nadia have been enormously helpful to us, and that is what Dave and I chose to do in terms of finding a method to get feedback that is informed and smart. And I will convey to everyone that your response was that there are other experts out there besides yourselves that should take a look at the script at the point that we're ready to shoot and give advice. And I think that that is certainly sage advice and consistent with, what Ricky found with his film.
Well, my answer to that would be, I think that, a lot of times when we make films, it's rooted in the director's vision or the writer's vision, and you're creating images and things that you want to see or that you think your audience wants to see, and you portray that in a way. I feel like when you're making sensitive content, things regarding mental health, it's about listening, and it seems with all of our films, we've all taken the measures to have the patience and the ear to listen and educate more and more on how we can be more authentic and how we portray these stories. And so, in our regard, like, again, interviewing multiple people who struggle with things like schizophrenia or other bipolar conditions and things like that. Because, even if you have one source of information, it doesn't mean that their experience is going to be the same as somebody else who has the same diagnosis. So you have to gather information from multiple people, but then also work with people like Mo and Nadia in the shift to connect with other mental health experts to make sure that you're not missing or you're not leaving any boxes unchecked when it comes to portraying something like that. So I think it's important. And then also when you build your crew, finding people who exist from a place of sentiment more than a place of look what I can do, I think is just key for any crew environment and any set with sensitive material.
Thank you.
Oh, I got a little anecdote
Tell me.
from our movie. When there's a scene that takes place in a hospital. Again, not giving away spoilers. It's like a very minimally invasive scene that involves surgery, and there's just certain things we didn't think about. And so the actress is there just in her regular clothes, and she's about to go into this like very minor surgical procedure. And I remember stopping, being like, should she be in her clothes or should she be like in some sort of like scrubs? And we literally stopped production. We didn't know the answer. Some Googled it. We literally called our friend who was a nurse, and we're like, hey, what's an accurate representation, what portrayal of what would go on in this situation? They're like, oh, she'd definitely be in the scrubs. She would have gone through that process. I don't know if they're called scrubs, whatever it is that you wear in surgery. And so we like found a pair of scrubs and like put her in it, and like it changed the scene. And that's something really minor. But if a nurse was watching that movie, they'd be like, oh, there's no way that would happen. Or if a doctor saw it. And so you just go the extra mile, whatever you can do to be honest.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to acknowledge, that to your point, Frank, and everybody, that when we work with filmmakers, we really are almost like an access point to other conversations, because it is that team collective effort of the professionals and the lived experience, and seeing how it lands on audience members who may not have as much education around a topic. What advice do you feel, for people who are either creating mental health related projects or even just as a consumer of mental health content?
I think it's important. I feel like we've all kind of touched on important topics and processes of addressing and making films based on this type of content. I think it's just extra important to stress the idea that we all have experiences and we can all spend years educating ourselves on a specific thing, but it's unlikely that any of us are going to have all the knowledge in the world or all the experiences in the world. So when you approach or you view content like this, or you create it as an audience member or director or writer or producer, or if the story is about yourself, it's important to know that there's always more to learn, to keep an open mind and approach this content with the idea of wanting to expand your understanding and further deepen the conversation and how to be there for people who are in need, and support them both in film and in real life.
Do you find that there was any kind of different reception or reaction towards your projects as a result of it being mental health related? And this could be in casting, it could be in funding, it could be in distribution. Any different reactions or surprising reactions for any of you?
With Charm Circle, I was very lucky to have so many in-person screenings at festivals and at theaters, and people felt, after seeing the movie, so many people felt like sharing their story with me or members of my family, because they felt safe to do that. Safe to share things that maybe they don't talk about. And I really loved that the film open that conversation, because that's going back to your takeaway question, the idea that people could watch this film and then maybe share it with someone else, and that's like a conversation starter to talk about things, that maybe would be harder to just bring up. So, and then to go back in terms of like, as someone who's making films, I agree, that with Ossey that we need, we don't know everything, and, you could spend many years, but at the same time, spend many years, because there's the process of making a movie, and then there's also the journey like that you're having yourself. And in order to navigate this forest for the trees, you have to give yourself time to process that, because you need time for the emotional up and downs too. Like that's part of good filmmaking, is taking care of yourself also.
Absolutely. I'm curious if anyone else, yeah.
Yeah, for us, part of the financing as well as our distributor that came on board, both of those individuals who were spearheading that were mental health advocates. So I don't know if this movie would have even been made and or distributed had we not had people championing us. So it definitely helps having a movie that you really care about and characters that you really care about. I mean, that we're all going to go 110%, and that shows on screen. And not to sound selfish or anything, but you're going to be able to like our movie was tiny, like tiny budget. And so like you're able to get those favors and help get those meetings and help get people to read the script because people just care. It's not some B schlock horror movie over here. We actually are trying to like change lives without sounding too grandiose. But at the same time, we do have to remember that this is entertainment, and for us, we kind of had this rule. It's like, it's okay to laugh. We're laughing with the characters. We laugh at them. We're laughing together. Like we needed to have moments of lightness within the movie, and we can't just get too bogged down in like these heavy, serious themes. And it's okay to just laugh at all this stuff. I mean, the heavier things get, the easier it is to laugh, believe it or not. And so that was kind of like one of our rules and guiding principles as we're making the movie. It's like every little scene, it's like just find a little moment where it's like you can smile or laugh and give a sense of hope. And so, yeah.
I think that's a very truthful approach for sure. Sometimes you have to laugh so you don't cry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious, going back to what you said, Mira, about that self-care and that time. Did anybody here find themselves taking measures that were different from everyday life just during that filmmaking process, or maybe right after it, around your mental health? Did you take any special new approaches? Did you see any professionals? Anything that anyone took on that way?
I guess just to speak in general, I guess this kind of segues off of what Nira said and just what we were saying. I think, if you're a director, I'm directing our film as well as a writer. I'm not sure if either of you, and maybe Nira, you wrote your project as well, or Frank. But I think that whenever I have a background in acting. I was an actor for a long time, and I think whenever you're acting or whenever you're writing or producing or direct anything in the creative space where you're influencing that, it's almost like you have to put a portion of yourself into that. And the more you invest yourself in that, the more you kind of become vulnerable to the effects of that content and that story. So, I feel like along with all the research that we did for our film, there's also a lot of personal experience from my own life and my co-writer Katie's life, and effects of family issues or relationships, or just people that we've come in contact who have affected us, or people who are dealing with those things on their own. So I think there is very much a personal investment in these kind of projects, as many, and like Nero was saying, like taking the time to allow yourself time to emotionally process that, even if you're just writing, and like Ricky said, we're making films, like you got to be lighthearted, you got to laugh, you got to realize that you're doing cinema, but you can still consider the effects of that both on yourself and your audience, and take the time for that. So that's important. Mm-hmm.
Ricky?
So on our set, like about halfway through, our production sound mixer got a text, and whatever it said on that text, he had a full-blown panic attack on set. and had to remove himself from set. And we actually shut down set for the day, and just like everybody went home because, you know, sound is obviously crucial. You can't have a movie without sound. And reflecting on that later, I was like, oh yeah, of course, we're making a mental health movie and somebody's having a mental health breakdown on set. Like, yeah, we've got to respect that, of course. Like, it would be just totally disingenuous of us if we're like, oh, get back on the microphone, you know? But the bigger reflection was like, well, what if this wasn't a mental health movie? Would we still have done that? And that's kind of what I took away from it. It's like, yeah, that's one of the growth and things that I learned through this process is like, yeah, if this wasn't a mental health movie, we should treat it the same way. If somebody has a mental health breakdown, they should be given the same respect, whether it's a horror movie or a mental health drama. You know, people experience these things all over the place.
Absolutely. No, that's so insightful and just sensitive to the reality of, you know, people sometimes need a moment. You can't predict that. And filmmaking on its own is hard enough. And you add in layers of these topics that can be personal or
Yeah.
something happening. There's a question in the Q&A from someone about whether any of you as filmmakers have thought about doing a kind of like post, you know, screening, circling up and, you know, sharing in terms of discussing the topic. It sounds like, you know, maybe a post screening Q&A or forum. I have found similar films disturb deep emotions, and I find I need an outlet to be in a community following, time to debrief or something like that.
Yes, and that just reminded me, if you're in New York, May 4th or 5th, Charm Circle is actually going to be a part of a panel in Beacon, New York, with a mental health panel after discussion about the film. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. I mean, most of the screenings have been, you know, more filmmaking based, but the obvious themes of the film, it comes through too. And I'm really looking forward to doing something like that. I have not had the chance to do something like that before, but I think it would be great to continue doing those kind of screenings with this film and my future films too.
Absolutely. I'm sure that would be a really great conversation and a good way to sort of reconcile whatever's come up during the film. There's another question in the Q&A. As filmmakers, you chose to create movies to make a change in the lives of others, resulting in some significant impact in these sensitive areas. What motivated you to deviate from the popular Hollywood entertainment trend? Anyone want to take that? Frank.
When I read Dave's script, it struck a chord with me personally because I had a very close family member who had mental health issues, mental illness, and I found myself in a similar position to that of the protagonist in Dave's script, with the need to conceal it out of embarrassment, out of feeling shame, because it was somewhat misunderstood at the time. And so when I read the script and realized that it was telling the same story that I had experienced, it caused me to want to get involved in seeing the film get made. We have a long ways to go in doing that, but I believe that the approach that we're taking with the tone of the film, where it's very meant to be very positive in terms of its outcome, and the story that it tells about the need to communicate, and the fact that someone can lead a very successful life even though they are suffering from this sort of illness, is one that is very inspiring for me personally, and I have a passion to see it get made. And I believe that we can convince others that it's worthwhile. And certainly, we all know that mental health is in the headlines today, with athletes and various celebrities that are experiencing it and experiencing the issues associated with the need to find their own mental health. So it's topical. And I think that the film community will be willing to accept the potential for a project like this one to perform well with an audience. So we're very hopeful in that regard.
Absolutely. And to that end, there's somebody asking, because these are personal stories, what is your process of getting funding, since these films might be more unique, not topics that are covered as widely? And Frank, you're in that funding world, so very curious how that works from even the inside.
Well, as you and Nadia know, because we've had discussions about this, I'm a big believer, and Dave is as well, in the need to find the right director, and then with the right director, go out to cast and build a package that is appealing to whomever our financier may be, whether that's a streamer, a studio, an independent company, an equity investor. I think everyone wants to know, not only do you have a good script, but do you have the talent attached that can realize the true potential of the project and be meaningful for an audience. And that's not to be cynical. It's only to say that the realities are that it's very difficult to raise financing, as we all know, for our projects, and you do need to find ways to encourage investment based upon demonstrating that you're building the film with a way to succeed in the marketplace.
Absolutely. Ricky, Ossey, or Nira, any insight into how you're approaching funding?
Yeah, I think it definitely helps. You know, anytime you have a cause-based movie, it's going to perk people's ears, but you just have to remember that we're not, at least our movie, it's a narrative movie, it's not a documentary. We're not writing an academic research paper here. Like, people need to be entertained. So those traditional story elements need to be there. You have to have great acting, great casting, great writing, great production value. You know, all those things that a normal good movie would have. You can't brush those aside and just say like, oh, I got this mental health story. Like, that's great. It's a mental health story, but it's got to have all the other stuff too. It's what makes it so difficult, but also it's like a little bit of a low hanging fruit for certain investors that might be interested in a project like this. It's exactly what our distributor had said. I know I had mentioned this earlier, but they came on board and were like, you know, my son just got diagnosed with OCD. This is a really fascinating subject matter. Like, we're going to put our time and energy and money behind this project. So, you know, it helps for sure, but you can't forget all those other things. You still gotta, it's at the end of the day, it is a form of entertainment, you know, even though there is an educational aspect to it. So you can't forget about those things.
And in terms, go ahead, Ossey.
Oh yeah, I mean, essentially everything that Frank and Ricky said, I could echo the same things. And just to further elaborate, you know, finding the talent and packaging something that is relatable to people. You know, you can put together an action film or an adventure film, and everyone knows that they're going to have fun with it. But the challenges are, like, when you have sensitive content that's about inclusion. Yeah, like, you know, like Ricky said, like, it can be a low-hanging fruit for investors and they can have a personal connection with it. But at the same time, there's people that maybe don't resonate as much as they should with content like this. So I think there are challenges for people who put time and effort to not just make something for the moment, but to really create something that has lasting legs and an impact, you know. So it's like someone asked earlier, you know, how, after viewing your film, what resources are there to continue relating and continue you know, finding support. And you know, one of the things that I like to do, I do with another company I work with, is we did a disability inclusion campaign. And like, that campaign, it was the product and that we made, the entertainment and the message but also it remained as a platform for people to communicate and view stories from the actual people that were the subjects and the actors and the talent in that campaign. So I think just putting authenticity into your project that's undeniable, because it's things that are happening to people every day, I think is key for funding. And so we are currently also seeking funding, utilizing those organic things mixed in with the treatments and the actors and the director and all the talent attached, all the good classic filmmaking stuff. Yeah.
For sure. It's also such a niche audience strategy at times once you have the funding showing that you can try to reach different aspects of the community you're talking about in one-on-one or closer proximity than necessarily widespread theatrical or streaming, which sounds like each of you will have the opportunity to do or have already started doing. I have two other questions here. One is for Ricky. Your film sounds great. How can we see it? And when you say tiny budget, can you give us a range as to what it was? Thank you.
The movie's coming out in a week-long theatrical run in Los Angeles, April 5th through the 11th. And then April 12th, it releases digitally on Amazon, iTunes, Vudu, wherever else you can, find movies. We haven't really totally publicly disclosed the budget. It was tiny. I mean, we shot the movie in my living room, a third of the movie in my living room. The other third of the movie took place in the bar that the director works at. So, I mean, our budget was like $65,000 or so, which is pretty small for a 2-hour movie. But we tiny crew, but we all muscled together to make it happen because we believed in the project, because there was a message behind it. We wouldn't have done this for another type of movie. So everybody was donating their time and energy and resources to make it happen. So yeah.
Great. Well, thank you for all of that time and effort. It is definitely worthwhile, and I definitely hope people take the time to see it. Nira, there's a question for you here. I'm not in New York. How can I see your film? Is it online?
Well, it just left the Criterion channel, but it will be available on Amazon like within the next few weeks. So if you follow along Charm Circle on social, like as soon as that's ready to go, you'll be able to see it that way really soon.
Awesome. Well, I know that we're coming up on towards the end here, and your films are each, of course, charting amazing courses for future mental health storytellers and filmmakers. We applaud you. We definitely want people to follow your journey. So as we shared earlier, we shared your bios in the chat. We're going to drop that in again in case anyone missed it. It also has a little bit of info about the shift, which you might have learned here. I'll do a quick call out because we are just announcing, and you're really some of the first to know, that we are working with filmmakers to support these mental health storytelling plans and processes through story consulting and production and impact marketing services. So if you are a filmmaker and you've got a mental health themed series or story in the works, please get in touch with us. We'd love to help you boost your reach and your visibility. And we're going to make sure that our email's in the chat for you to get a hold of us. We're also going to be dropping in links for each of these films where you can reach or see these filmmakers. So those are going to be there. Great job, Ricky. You deserve an award for getting the movie made. Congratulations. I see that. And an enormous thank you, of course, for all of your sharing. I want to give you each one last chance to plug proudly, shamelessly your film. What do you need? Who do you need it from? And where can people find you? Why don't we start with, we'll go in the order that we started with, Ricky.
Well, our hope is that this movie can kind of enter and have a long shelf life. So anybody that has been or thinking about or has been into any sort of mental health recovery group, hopefully this movie is a sense of hope, an accurate representation. And yes, at times it's a dark movie, but it ends on a positive note. And hopefully it could be used as a recovery tool down the road. And anytime anybody is thinking about getting into the mental health OCD recovery, they can just watch this movie and it's like a good first guiding step.
Absolutely. Ossey?
Cool. Well, let's see, shameless plugs. Right now our film is still in development. We've got the whole script finished and we are currently seeking funding for the film. There's a director of photography attached. We've got a location, which is a beautiful home designed for Beverly Garland. It's a mid-century modern house. Believe it or not, the windows in this house play as a key character in the house itself in the story. And yeah, you can find me on Instagram. I'm in the middle of revamping websites and stuff like that. But yeah, just reach out and I'm happy to share any materials or things about the film further we can discuss.
Great. Mira?
Hi, yeah, you can reach out to me on my Instagram, nira.isanalog, or if you want to check out and follow also Charm Circle, this is Charm Circle. Have a website, it's all very Googleable, I think. And yeah, and right now I'm always looking to hear from people who've seen the movie or want to collaborate, or yeah, want to like throw money to my next projects. I am literally shooting a film this weekend. It's a narrative short that is also very mentally health themed, that I've had some feedback from the ship that's been super helpful in the development. So really excited about that, to get that one made.
Awesome. Excited for you. And Frank, you're up. And I want to give Frank this shout out from the chat. If 6 were 9 by Jimi Hendrix, is that the title inspo?
I can't answer that question. I'll have to ask my collaborator, Dave. But I will say that, you know, mounting a feature film, getting one off the ground is a very challenging feat. And certainly in today's environment. So we're going to need a lot of luck. And we're going to have to go out and find the people that are passionate as we are to make this film. I'm confident that we can and we will, because it's a very worthwhile project and it's a film that deserves to get made. So I'm optimistic.
I would agree. I remember having a look at what you shared and feeling the sense of it's possible to show your true self and still find out you can still be loved. And I really want to make sure that your film gets made to just continue to remind all of us we all have differences and we are all in our own conversations that could use support and community. There's someone just saying thank you so much for this panel. I'm grateful to see other mental health advocates that are also filmmakers. You really all deserve the best with each of your films. So generous of you to share your knowledge and your experience today with everyone. And I want to also thank SHIP's co-founder and today's producer, Nadia Sarmova, who brought this initiative and each of you together today. And who's been behind the scenes just creating all the technical magic along with Sam Kroll, our associate producer. And of course, reach out if you want to start a conversation. And until then, really just keep shifting, because we all know one small step can make a difference. So keep on keeping on. Anything else anybody wants to leave people with?
The shift is awesome. Thank you.
Yes, the shift is awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes.
Virtual high fives. Thank you, everyone.
Already.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.